All right, thank you everybody for joining. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by three inspiring CEOs and friends. We're going to talk a little bit more about their companies as we go, but they span the gamut of interactions with go-to-market teams from early on to late stage, and with a great deal of different perspective and experience to bring. So please join me in welcoming Manny Medina, CEO of Outreach, Nick Mehta, CEO of Gainsight, and Juliana Stancampiano, the CEO of Oxygen, and also in her spare time, which I'm sure there must be lots of spare time, the leader of the Sales Enablement Society, largest global nonprofit association dedicated to elevating the enablement function. So thank you all for joining. We're excited to have you.
Thank you for having us.
Great to be here. Thanks, Doug.
Great.
So Juliana, let's start with you. Oxygen's a service organization. You help large companies in change management and helping them navigate complex business transformations. Oftentimes, maybe a lot of times, dealing with their go-to-market activities and their enablement functions in general. Probably don't need anyone to remind us that this past year has been a challenging one that has taught us a lot about resilience and the ability to keep moving through challenging circumstances. I don't want to talk about the bad stuff. I'd rather talk about what maybe some of the most surprising and positive impacts that you've seen with your clients as you've seen them go through some of the changes in this past year.
Yeah, it's such a great question, and I love the positive spin on it because we've seen a lot of the opposite, right? I think some of the most positive things we've seen has really been fast leadership, change, and response to what's happening. As you can imagine, just being the people that are in front of the client and having a global pandemic come down and nobody knows what's going on. The messaging that we saw so quickly coming out of leadership, and I will say, like, some of the worst PowerPoints I've ever seen in my life, right? Where it's just like words on slides, get this out to people so that they have it, so that we can start to drive a new message, because all of a sudden everything has changed. And those were probably some of the most uplifting moments at the beginning of the pandemic, was just seeing that fast response time and how much leaders of these very large organizations were so incredibly responsive to the people that all of a sudden were fielding questions and conversations on a daily basis that none of us have ever had to deal with before. And I would say, as we've continued to go through it, the response to this is a lot of change for people, and supporting their people internally as much as they can while we navigate continuous change, which is really exhausting for us as humans. It just is. And while we like to think we're extremely good at change and we can navigate it, I don't think that this type of ongoing change, and then a lot of the world events that are happening and the US events that are happening in the midst of it, giving people time for pause. We've seen some really strong leadership in that perspective. Allowing people to take the breaks that we need. And also, I think the other aspect that we saw was really this affecting leaders in a way that it hasn't affected them before. And so there's a lot of empathy being garnered during this time for people and organizations, and where we're all trying to navigate through as successfully as we can, I think has just been really astounding.
Yeah, I think we can probably all four of us relate to that one in particular. Manny, how about you? You get a really unique perspective on kind of the top of funnel interactions with your clients and customers. What kind of positive changes have you seen?
There's two things that I've seen. So the pandemic was not just the pandemic. It brought to the fore a number of other issues that sort of is coloring our new standard of doing business. So it was the fact that, we had a pandemic, and then here in Seattle is where the whole thing started. You're welcome. And then Seattle also was the epicenter of a lot of the Black Lives Matter movements. We shut down half the city, and that was dedicated as a place for protesting and displaying sort of like the voice of the people who have been oppressed in the past. And then we were also the recipient of the fires, which sort of you could feel like a third pandemic, with Oregon and Portland sort of burning, and the Eastern Washington and Northern Washington also burning, and you couldn't breathe outside. So that created a significantly higher awareness of everybody else's state of mind and a state of being, even in your prospects. And the second piece is that because we're coming back so slowly, and the sort of like unknowns around vaccines and unknowns around virus strains, the current situation is settling in, right? With 50% of business travel is gone, and about 80% of buyers, according to McKinsey, are preferring this digital first sort of interaction. So from a top of funnel perspective, top of funnel is pretty much all you have right now. The dropping in, to come and visit, or the dinner to open up the conversation, or the event is gone. So what makes you do is you're gonna have to be incredibly relevant. You're gonna have to make sure that you run a great success organization, because whoever your reference customer is going to be more important than you trying to crack open that account with your own voice or your own activities. So running a great success program is even more important in an era in which there's a lot of noise on the top of the funnel. And last is bringing, you can see this in the ABM space, and you're seeing the demand-based determinants and the sixth senses sort of like getting a lot more traction now, because you have to be able to be targeted, you have to be able to be relevant, and you have to be able to have the voice of the customer being first, all wrapped up in a good, nice empathic way of communicating, because we're all sort of like getting through it together. So I know that was a lot, but the world has changed significantly since COVID started, and this is where we are now.
Yeah, most definitely. Nick, I think Manny touched on it, but the post-customer journey has always been important, but it's more critical than ever. I'd say, what kind of positive changes have you seen as a result of everything that happened this past year?
Yeah, totally. Plus one to what Juliana and Manny said, in my world of kind of seeing what happens after the sale and how companies are managing customer success and onboarding and support and all that stuff, I think broadly there's just a lot more focus on it, because I think we all know that the strength of connection we had with our customers, if we're not delivering value and not delivering outcomes, we're not going to be able to keep and grow those customers. So this sort of 2020 has been a wake-up call for a million different things, and one of them was this focus on customer success. But within that, Doug, three things I think are kind of nuanced that are pretty interesting from a customer engagement standpoint that I've seen. Number one is, I think we all get that although we can't go on site anymore near term, and we can't do as many of those in-person meetings, we're able to do a lot more volume of customer engagement. So the volume is just off the charts probably for every organization, but in the post-sales world, I'm sure in the pre-sales top of funnel world too, volume is just, because your calendar, 30-minute Zoom meetings, you can do so many of them, right? So that's number one. Number two is, I think because of the friction, lower friction of doing these meetings, the ability to access people at your prospects and customers it's way higher than before, in my opinion. So for example, we do an executive briefing on customer success and across the company why it should be a company-wide priority. And before, like as a $100 million SaaS company, doing those briefings is actually hard. It's hard to get somebody, your exec team, to fly out to your office and go do that. If you're a Salesforce.com or someone, it's probably easier, but for mid-sized companies, it's harder. But we were able to do those in a virtual fashion, and every single one we proposed, customers did it. It's incredible, actually. So like your ability to actually engage across the company and at the senior levels way higher. And then the third thing I think that I've seen is we've kind of broken the wall between business and work, like literally broken it. But what that's allowed us is to actually have a deeper human connection. It's this weird paradox. Like we aren't shaking hands with the buyer anymore or the customer anymore. But I actually think in many ways we're making more connections because we're seeing their home. We're actually like connecting with them where they are as a human being. As an example of that, and I think all of us have had these examples. Like, I was on a call with a potential customer the other week, and his 3-year-old kid came over. And she sat on his lap, and then she wanted where it was a one-on-one Zoom, and she wanted to start doing the Zoom art. And so we literally did Zoom art together for 5 minutes, right? And that's the kind of thing where it's like you build these connections that are actually really different. So it's kind of a paradox. We want to go back to the dinners and the drinks and all that, but we've actually gained some kind of human connection here as well.
Yeah, usually for better. Once in a while, maybe not for better, but it has been fun to get a glimpse into people's more personal life through work.
Right.
So Nick, let's stick with you if you don't mind. Gainsight, amazing company. Congratulations on that. You've really established customer success as a function. I think something that is a really difficult thing to do and to pull off. And you've really created the language of customer success and gone a long way with towards establishing it across the industry and all the companies out there. We touched upon, kind of the importance of that function in this time. One of the challenges I think we always see is how do you get the various parts of the organization to work together? So, what advice might you have, on how to get sales, marketing, customer success really to work together in attracting, attaining, and growing and keeping those customers that you have?
Yeah, totally. I think there's one thing that we see as a mega trend across our clients, which is, as you said, Doug, customer success kind of grew up as a silo in a company, but now people want to make it more cross-functional, kind of tying into what Juliana and Mandy were talking about, which is we want a end-to-end customer journey, right? It's kind of weird because marketing teams were working on a journey that ended like when a sale was done or a lead was created. And then customer success teams were working on a journey that started when onboarding began and sort of, hopefully went on for a long time. But we want an end-to-end journey. And I think many of us have experienced as buyers this very frustrating process, which is you're talking to a sales team, you're going through your research process. They ask you tons of questions in discovery. You explain everything about your business and you buy some software, you sign an electronic signature. Now you go into your onboarding call and they say, first question is, so what do you want to accomplish with this project, right? And it's like that all that knowledge was totally lost. And by the way, there's a lot of problems with that because the people that the vendor is dealing with now at the client are often more junior post-sale. And so that person on the other end of the conversation has no idea what the goal is. I don't know. My boss told me we were supposed to implement Outreach or Gainsight or something else, Seismic, right? And so there's this issue of basically losing sight of value end to end. And this is the way to rally your company around customer success. It's build a framework that spans your whole company around what are value and outcomes for your clients, for Seismic clients, for Outreach clients, for Gainsight clients. And actually that's a hard problem, right? Like what are the reasons people buy our stuff? There's actually you can have 100 different things. You have to build it into sort of a framework of, okay, here's the 6 categories, here's the subcategories. And then in the sales process, in your discovery, you're getting discovery around that value. You're doing your ROI models around that value. It's automatically turning into your success plan post-sale of how you're delivering that value. You go back to the buyer later on and say, look at the value you asked for and look at what we delivered. You do the expansion. End-to-end value is like the mega trend to unify a company around customer success.
So Juliana, all of us technology providers here, we paint a great vision and, a few PowerPoint slides, hopefully not ugly ones, beautiful ones. Here's how easy it is. You're in the front lines of actually trying to make these organizations work and have them work together. What do you see? Hold us all accountable here for what you're seeing in the real world and how these struggles are being dealt with.
I love being able to bring it together and also told my whole family not to come in right during this time. But there you go. That's a direction for an 8-year-old. This is such an interesting question in my mind because technology doesn't fix it. And I think probably we all agree with that. And it's an extreme enabler all at the same time. And there are people that have to use it and engage with it and figure out how to make it work for the betterment of the company and the customer and for all these people, right? And I think the biggest thing that we have found, and this seems so simple, and yet with the amount of time that we're all in meetings and trying to do work, it's listening to one another. Like literally, if I'm in sales enablement, I have got to sit with my marketing people and listen to them and understand where they're coming from and try to bring the perspective of sales into that conversation. And then, take that through and help the sellers with it and take that through from the sellers. And I love this because a lot of times I think we've all been a part of that, the old, like, okay, I sold it. Now you please just go deliver it and make sure it's great so that I can come back in 2 months, 6 months, whatever the timeline is, and sell some more. And it doesn't work like that anymore. And so you have to talk to one another. You have to spend the time doing the work together is probably the key thing that we find successful, and I've heard this both through the Sales Enablement Society and the practitioners, when people ask about collaborating with marketing and collaborating with customer experience or success or services, wherever those aspects are in their companies, the largest thing that they say is we have to do the work together. And I mean, get in the room, open up the documents, and literally do the work together so that you can have empathy for where everybody's coming from and talking through how it works. And then, if you do that enough, we start to see kind of a flywheel happening where you don't have to talk about it quite as much. You don't have to work together quite as much, and everything's streamlined. Oh, and the customer's super happy, and so that's the hard part. And I think carving out that time is probably the most difficult thing that we see as a constraint to making it happen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Over the course of the Digital Shift conference that we've had these last couple of days, we've heard from a bunch of different speakers, customers of ours, analysts, consultants, friends, told us a lot of different transformation stories, that have happened in the past year and how they're addressing their go-to-market overhauls. Manny, you're CEO of Outreach. Outreach is an incredible rocket ship of a company. It's been a lot of fun as a partner and to watch it go. You've really kind of taken the field of sales engagement and taken it to a whole new level. And I'm curious, what kind of transformations are you seeing at the top of the funnel? How do you think it's going to be disrupted or transformed, out over the next couple of years?
I think there's a couple of transformations happening. The first one is clearly the move to digital experiences, and the fact that with business travel not coming back the way it was, how do you generate top of the funnel that is quality, and that translates into a great experience post, once you go through the funnel, you become a customer, and then you re-up. There's a couple of things that we're seeing. So first of all, the digital experiences have to be on point. In that again, to my first point, you have to sell success. So you have to sell the success of somebody who already went through that journey with you, and you have to parlay that. So it forces alignment between marketing and sales in success. Because if you don't generate a pipeline that produces successful customers, forget revenue. You're generating a pipeline that produces successful customers because that feeds the top of the funnel again. Those customer stories are way more valuable than whatever marketing material you're creating. The second thing is that, and this is a little different, but it's coming together more and more in that AEs are becoming really good at managing sort of like very small targeted social networks. In that, yes, you can go to G2 Crowd and read a review, but that they're a little, they're game, right? Or yes, you can, go, post a question on LinkedIn and you're gonna get a lot of opinions. But at the end of the day, you're gonna trust the people in your network. So the best AEs do two things. They maintain and sort of like garden, if you would, like they trim and they seed it to the flourishing and nourishing of this sort of like a small group of customers that have bought from them, because they deploy that into their new customers in the form of case studies, in the form of testimonials, in the form of one-on-one connections. So they're becoming like micro community managers in a sense, because that is really hard to do. It's really hard to get that engagement in a sort of like all digital war. So they're trying to get that way. And the second thing that AEs are doing really well is that they're really good at selling a vision of success and working it back to the present. You see what I mean? The whole let me tell you about me, let me tell you about me, let me tell you about me. It's a little bit gone. And what you're saying is, let me tell you about my customer and their success, and then let me tell you about you and your success, and let me work it back to a demand and then work it back to what do I show you so you believe me. So, a lot of the marketing programs that I'm seeing are being very, very successful. You were interviewing for a CMO right now, and the best interviews are the ones that come up with really clever ways of getting a customer to talk to a prospect. In an online world, in a sort of in a non-pressure world, in a very real world, where a customer and the prospect sort of can mind melt around a problem, and then they can walk through a solution, and the AE is just curating the experience as this whole thing walks through the funnel. So it's really fascinating to see, because actually I think that it makes us better humans, to be frank, the fact that we have to put that much emphasis in that kind of experience.
We can all benefit from becoming better humans. So,
Right.
good stuff. How about you, Juliana? If you were looking to your crystal ball, where do you see enablement? You get a lot of different perspectives on this one. So where do you see enablement going, over the next couple of years?
Well, so enablement's kind of fascinating because it's so young in one way, right? Or and some people started putting it on their resumes even before it was a word probably that we used. But it's coming into, I would say, some of the height of actually being recognized in companies. People are starting to look for it a lot more. There are many more roles in enablement now than we saw even just a couple of years ago. You start to have senior people, mid-level people, junior enablers. Those functions are becoming more robust. They're getting more attention and time and budget because they are, in my mind, this translation layer between marketing and sales, and help to make that a smoother connection point for both the company but also customers. So they're being seen as more and more critical to the success from a sales perspective. And I think, and so that's kind of the functional aspect of sales enablement, and where I believe that it's continuing to head. And what I think is also very fascinating is we start to have some very senior people in sales enablement, which hasn't happened, and their scope starts to increase, and you start to see these enablers of, and I think we all have friends that have talked about just, this revenue enablement, right? So you've got market, they start to enable marketing, they start to enable the customer experience side of things. And we're seeing that growth more and more within the society, generally across roles. And we did some surveying last year at our conference. And then I think it's the big push to digital. What's going to stay? What are we going to do that's not digital once we can? And there's a lot of those questions that people are looking at. But these virtual SKOs and keeping people grounded more than they were before, a lot of people are really leaning into that. They're loving it. Their family's like, oh, we get to see you again, on a more regular basis. So I don't see us going back. And sales enablement's really been on the forefront of pushing those things forward for our companies and the different people that are supporting it.
Yeah, most of us miss our customers. We miss our teams that are in different parts of the globe, but I don't know too many people that miss the hotels and the airports, flight delays, and the middle seats.
Totally.
And Nick, customer success also, sort of a newer function, still nascent, still emerging, still changing. How do you see it transforming over the next couple of years?
Yeah, first of all, just plus one on Juliana's point about a virtual kickoff. We had a virtual kickoff for our company last week, and everyone said it was the best kickoff they've ever been to, ours and others. And I think that's probably an indictment on some of the in-person kickoffs out there. So I give you three predictions and a bonus kind of long-term one. So the three more near-term ones are, Juliana talked about enablement in sales, and that's such a big area. There's a huge focus on customer success, operations, and enablement right now. Every company is building out that function. If you are building a big customer success team, you can't just throw them out there and say, hey, figure it out. Just like we've done all this work on enablement and ops for salespeople, doing the same thing for CS. The second thing that's really, really prominent now is thinking about how product and CS can work together. And Doug, your team does a great job of this at Seismic, where the analogy we draw is like you have the marketing and sales partnership. Right, marketing is kind of giving air cover and data and all that, and sales is on the ground working with the customers. Very similar product and customer success, and that partnership is only going to get stronger as we go forward. The third one is we're seeing more and more CS teams taking on revenue responsibility. In some cases, obviously renewals. In some cases, either helping to drive smaller expansions or at least being really tightly aligned with sales around smaller expansions. And then the last one, which is more further out, is, anytime you have a new function, you spend a lot of time in that world of like, okay, so this new function, do we need it? What's the ROI? A lot of companies have gone through, what's the ROI of customer success? Why do we really need it? How do we know if they're having an impact? But at some point you get to the point where it's just part of the water, right? No, very few companies are like, so do we really need engineers? What's the value of salespeople? Like now some companies do question the second a little bit, but in general, most don't. And so I think customer success will become part of the water.
Very good. A couple more questions here. This is really, really enjoyable and lively conversation, to say the least. Juliana, you're the president and board of directors of the Sales Enablement Society. I think there's almost 8,000 or maybe over 8,000 people at this point in time. It's certainly seen tremendous growth over the last couple of years, especially, you know, we're still getting enablement to be an actual word in the dictionary. You've recently made some changes to expand and diversify the board members, and there's some great things coming. We're big fans, obviously, at Seismic. It's near and dear to what we do. What can we expect to hear from you in the year ahead?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we're almost up to 9,000 members at this point, which seems crazy in the very few short years that it's been around. And we're maturing. We hired our first executive director, our first person that's on a payroll, which has been an awesome experience. And in the true words of awesome, not like the colloquial, but like very much so, has been such a great shift for us. As a society, we have somebody that wakes up every day and thinks about what needs to be done and how to help us, you know, provide what the members are looking for. And I think that's really, you know, answers the question that you're asking. And we have a lot of members that are looking for where to start, how to mature, how to help. You know, they need so much information that really there's no body or organization out there that doesn't have a leg in the game for making some money off of it outside of the society. So we're doubling down on content this year. We've created also a partnership with Johns Hopkins University. We're creating the first academia-driven sales enablement material ever. So that's really exciting. That'll be launching probably towards the later part of this year. We'll start with fundamentals. We'll do some on the advanced size and then do the intermediate. So a lot of people come to us and say, where can I go to learn X? Where can I learn to go Y? And so we are also going to be creating our own content as well as partnering with our partners so that we can offer more of that content on a site that is neutral, right? And is really just there to help elevate sales enablement and the profession specifically. And so that's really our focus this year. And we're back and forth on whether our conference is going to be virtual, in person, or hybrid, and all of those fun things. But primarily it's going to be around getting that content out and starting to kind of put a stake in the ground for defining enablement. So to your point, like, let's get it in the dictionary because we're going to start defining it.
Fantastic. That's exciting stuff. And we certainly appreciate all the work that you and the society are doing. Manny, turn to you if you don't mind. You've recently opened up in a series of articles, interviews, saw you on CNBC not too long ago, pretty cool stuff, about the challenges and at times self-doubt that can creep into being an immigrant founder. I really applaud you for raising this and bringing up this important issue, but I'm really curious as to the type of responses and feedback that you've been getting since you've been sharing these experiences.
It has been overwhelmingly positive, and I've seen people come from all walks of life to sort of talk about how me coming out and saying, what it's like to found a company and being an immigrant and all the overcoming imposter syndrome and how to live with it and how to deal with it as you grow, as you become more successful, has emboldened them to be open and talk about their own imposter syndrome and their own challenges in their own way. So, there's some things that resonate quite a bit with other immigrants, right? Like the fact that I think in the article it says that I have to translate every time I count or do math because I do it faster in Spanish than I do it in English. But there's some others that don't resonate as much with people who are from here, but they still have their own version of imposter syndrome. So, women and other minorities that don't have that problem, but they have other problems. But the ability to deal with it and talk about it openly is very powerful. And I think it harkens back to a lot of what Brené Brown talked about, in that there is power in vulnerability. This is not a soft science or soft talk. This is real talk, and this is hard talk, and this is, the way that you connect with other humans is how we make a living. At the end of the day, the art of sales, the art of enablement, the art of success are human beings working with each other to make other human beings successful. So if those are topics of conversations, we're just going to be better as an industry. We're going to be better as a society. We're going to be better as a profession, and it's going to enable us to actually open the doors for other people so that they can feel comfortable and bring their whole self to work. So I'm very excited, and I'm actually so encouraged that I may write sort of like follow-ons on it. And I was just talking to our PR person around, how do you fundraise when you have all this imposter syndrome, or like how do you hire people who are that you think yourself you're not worth hiring, but you have to go do it to grow your team and grow yourself. And how do you form your board? You know what I mean? Like recently I took a bold step to just going out and asking Ralph de la Vega to join our board. He was the former CEO and chairman of AT&T. I read of him in books. I never actually met him, and now he's on our board, right? So like you have to take those like bold steps, but you have to also be at peace with the fact that they're hard and that you have to drive yourself to do it, and it's not easy. And that just makes you a better person.
That's great. It's going to be exciting to see how that, you become an inspiration for the next generation. And I guess we'll have to, as we were adding enablement to the dictionary, we'll also have to figure out how to translate unicorn into every language on the planet. Right? I'm not sure that'll be an easy one. Nick, you've been busy as well. You recently announced the CSU Apprentice Initiative, helping to level the playing field a bit for marginalized communities and giving them internship opportunities in customer success field that they might not otherwise have. Can you give us a little bit of information? How's that going?
Yeah, it's amazing. I'll just give you some background. Last summer, after the killing of George Floyd and all the conversation on Black Lives Matter, every single company, every person was saying, how can you help? And one thing we realized is, we all know in tech, Black and Latinx people are significantly underrepresented in technology in general, but it was also true in the profession of customer success that we serve, right? Customer success is actually the 6th fastest growing job in the world. But it was very much, if you looked at the folks in the profession, it looked a lot like other parts of tech, sales, marketing, product, et cetera. And so the question was, since this job is going so fast, and since Gainsight's at the center of this job, can we help in some small way by helping to change who are the people that come into customer success? Because it's a new job, and there's no reason why we couldn't open the funnel, right? Otherwise, what ends up happening is, Seismic hires from Outreach, and Outreach hires from Gainsight, and Gainsight hires from Seismic, right? And not that we'd ever do that, but theoretically. And so that concept of just like, we're not expanding the funnel, we're just like kind of swirling things around in the existing funnel. Can we help in customer success? And so what we decided to do is partner with an organization called SV Academy, which their mission is basically doing this for lots of professions in tech. And we created a apprentice and internship program where we bring people in from underrepresented backgrounds, and they come in from totally different jobs and walks of life, hospitality, retail, places that actually are really negatively affected by the economy. And they come in, and we basically, with SV Academy, we train them on working in a tech company, but specifically being in the CSM job, the customer success manager job. And then we've been really fortunate to partner with a lot of employers who are our clients to basically bring these folks in as interns. And then the idea is that over time, they could become full-time employees. And what's really cool about this is the companies benefit because they get great people, and it's so hard to hire great people. But then also we all benefit because we all look at the new workforce, and we don't have the same stereotypes of what a great tech person, what a great CSM should look like. We just had our first class graduate, which is super exciting. And we do all these events with them, and it's incredibly energizing. I would love all of you to see them. The events are open, so you can actually join. And we basically they're going into companies now. And actually Gainsight had 4 interns from this program. We hired all 4 full time. We've raised through our partners and investors and employers $1 million for this program so far. And we're going to keep going. So there's going to be more and more classes. And the big crazy goal long-term is you think about the life path of somebody who is outside of tech and what their path of career earnings is, making an hourly wage at minimum wage or maybe slightly above that. And you think about the path people are on when they're in tech. And so what we hope for is to be able to calculate the wage expansion across all these folks and be able to generate hundreds of millions of dollars of incremental wages for people by shifting them to an opportunity set they just didn't get access to. So it's early, but we actually had the first class graduate, which is very exciting.
That's fantastic, and congratulations on the vision and on getting that first class to graduate.
Thanks.
Cool. We look forward to watching that as it goes forward. I really appreciate the insight from all of you, and thank you all for taking the time with us. Really enjoyed the conversation. Look forward to hopefully doing it live face-to-face next year in the not too distant future. Thank you all.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.